Well, it is good to be with you all this morning. And many of you do know me very well over the last many years. Kevin and Anna is probably in the nursery, but most of you have not met our youngest one, Amara. You'll see her, I'm sure, dashing about. She is cute, she's determined, but also very busy. And you'll see that as well later on. Our sons, since the last time you've seen them, they have shot up probably at least a head, a foot or so. Noah is now 13. Nathan is turned 10 today. So it is good to be back with you all. We're here just for about 2.5 weeks over Christmas. The last time we were here, Nathan was still 1, and we flew back while we still had a free ticket on his 2nd birthday. So that's how long it's been since we've been back at Christmas time. And so they've really enjoyed spending Christmas with their grandparents, with their cousins. So it's been nice to be back for a little bit. I'll show a video. It's just under 4 minutes. And then I believe after that, we'll dismiss the children and we'll take question and answers and talk a little bit more about the ministry. But we've been in the UK, in Wales, for January 19th. It'll be 9 years that we've been over there. 8 years since we've been at the church that we're at. And so in the video, I'll try to talk a little bit through the video, but you'll kind of see more overview of what our town is like. It is very congested. There is about 60,000 people in about 15 square miles. So it is house upon house. I often mention our house is 19 feet wide, and it is connected to the house on the right, and it is connected to the house on the left. Our back garden is 19 feet, actually I think it's only about 18 feet wide is what our house is. So our back garden is 18 feet wide by about 30 feet deep. And that is our property. So very, very congested. The downside is a lack of privacy, but the plus side is you walk everywhere and you meet people, you see people, and it is a much better way of reaching out into our community. So we'll go ahead and show the video at this time, and then we'll dismiss the children and we'll talk about more about the ministry. There should be some music if you have some sound. But this is Barrie, Wales. We're right on the south end of Wales, right on the Bristol Channel. In 1912, it became the #1 coal exporting port in the world. In 2023, we had 14 baptized. This year, we had 2 baptized. This is our Totally Tots ministry, and this is during the song time in the Bible story where they all push the chairs to the side and join in. This is during the playtime, and I'll talk to a little bit more about the Totally Tots in a bit. This is a ladies' event and one of our evangelistic outreach events. This is our coffee morning. You'll actually see Pastor Tim and Christine just made it into this video briefly. And then this was our Totally Tots teddy bear picnic. And we had over 200 individuals throughout the day with the outreach. And this here shows a little flyover from our main building to our second building. It's about 100 yards down the road from property to property. And it's where we have our Sunday school 4 years old on up. They get dropped off at the other building, and then they walk down around 11:45, and the parents collect them in our main building. So you can see the building right there. So it's just down the road. So you get a little glimpse of Barry and our church, and I believe right now we can go ahead and dismiss the children. So as I mentioned, we moved there in January of 2016, worked in Pontypridd, Wales, which is about 45 minutes north of us, about 30 minutes north of Cardiff, the capital city of Wales. And we were in contact with the church there, Princess Street, moved down there in 2017. At the time, there were only 6 members and 6 in attendance. And so we're very grateful to see what God has done over the last now 8 years. And really through Totally Tots has been the main ministry where we've been able to connect with individuals who are unchurched. I was just calculating in my mind just a couple days ago, and of those under the age of 60, besides, I believe, maybe 2 couples, everybody else is from an unchurched background. And so it creates a lot of work in one sense of discipling, but yet on the other hand, it's exciting because really that's what we're there for, just the reaching out into the community. And most of that has been connections made through the Totally Tots ministry. I'm sure throughout the years you've heard or seen in the newsletters about Totally Tots. And really what it is we just move the chairs to the side. Parents come in with their children. We have probably about a 45-minute time where the children just play. There's toys all set up. Parents socialize, get a cup of coffee, get a cup of tea. But it's a time that we're able to connect with the parents, have conversations, and then after that, then we have about 15 minutes to 20 minutes or so of God songs and some other songs, and that's what they call it, is God songs. Basically, simple Sunday school songs. My God is so great, so strong and so mighty, or God is so good, or just simple songs. And then after that, there's a short Bible story that Anna often does, and sometimes it's geared towards the children with the parents in mind, but sometimes she switched it up and spoke directly to the parents, and just recognizing, where are you at? People, we struggle in life. Where do you turn to? And speaking about Jesus as the hope, but it's not just what happens there, it's connections that are made there and conversations and relationships that are built outside of that. And many times Anna will mention, you know what, if you need to talk, coffee's on me, let me know. And so there's a lot of follow-up beyond that. And then special services, like we had our children's nativity just recently, and in that there was a push. All of the Tots children will be singing Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star in the children's nativity. And so, of course, if the children are there, that means the parents come along as well. And so it's just that added bonus of connecting with people. And the other thing, when we started up the well, actually it was started previously, but we were in a smaller room, and as it began to grow, we had to move into our main hall. Now, some people call it a sanctuary, some people call it different names. I've kept the name as the main hall because it's not this room or this building that is sanctified. It is you and me that is sanctified who come into this room, and it is a place where we worship. Now, there were some skepticism of, well, I know in the past we would never have allowed it. I mean, having children playing around in the sanctuary. But yet in my mind, it is just a building. And during COVID, I mentioned this is just a tool for us to gather together and worship. During COVID, the internet became a better tool for 4 months when we couldn't meet in the building. But really what the blessing that has come is when parents come in for Totally Tots, they become familiar with the entire building. And I often mention, really, every single one of us has fears. And probably what sums up most of our fear is the unknown, right? We don't know what the future holds, so we have anxiety about it. For an unchurched person, probably some of the biggest reasons of the fear of stepping in the church, once again, are the unknowns. The unknown of the layout of the building and the unknown of the people. But one of the things that the Totally Tots does, it breaks down the unknown of the building because they come in, they know the layout of the building, they know the layout of where the bathrooms are, they know what to expect when they come on a Sunday, but along with that, they get to know maybe 4 or 5 individuals. So when they show up on a Sunday, they already have some of those connections and people know them when they walk in. And so I think that's one of the biggest things that Totally Tots, it kind of breaks down all of those unknowns. And so it makes people, when they walk into church who have never attended church in their life, well, they already feel comfortable. And so that's been a great blessing with that. So as I mentioned, last year, 2023, we had 14 individuals baptized, 13 adults, 1 child. And of those 13 individuals, I think it was about 9 of them, 9 of those adults who had an unchurched background, where never went to church except within just the last couple of years. And so it's been amazing just to see what God has done in their lives. This year we've had 2, one of them being Nathan, was baptized just not too long ago. And so, but as you see God work, Satan also wants to stir things up as well. And so we had a great year of blessing, but I would also say we had probably a year of the most difficult time in our ministry. And so there were many challenges, many individuals who had come from other churches just after COVID for various reasons who have now gone and caused a struggle and a difficulty, but we're very thankful how God has brought that healing as we continue moving forward as a church, but also just being reminded, we're not here to take people from other churches. We're here to evangelize, to reach people with the gospel, people who have never been to church, people who may not have even thought about attending church, seeing them reached with the gospel. And one of the ladies, she was the second person in the video of being baptized. Her husband is still not a believer. He comes quite regularly with her to church. But when she was talking more about being baptized and talking to him more about church and who God is and all of that, her husband mentioned, I'm not atheist. I've just never thought about God. My parents growing up, they never went to church. It was never talked about at home. And I think in many ways, people around us, whether in the United Kingdom or even here, if they don't go to church, we just write them off as, well, they're against God. But you know that the fact may actually be they've just never thought about God. They've grown up in a home that it was never discussed. They've lived their life. They've gone to work. They've done all of these different things, and it's just never been at the forefront of their mind. And so really, that is our role, not just us as missionaries, but every single one of us, is to introduce people to Jesus, to introduce them of who God is, and it may be completely different than what they've heard about God or thought about God, whether it's in movies and culture, whatever it might be, but introducing them to the God of the Bible, to Jesus of the Bible, and inviting them to know Him personally. And so that's what has been exciting is once you reach unchurched people, all of their friends and families are still unchurched. And so it continues to open up many new doors. So I'll open it up for questions, and I'll try to give some answers. Does anybody have a question that you would like to ask? Yes?
Are there many dads that are involved in talks?
There's not as many. Normally there's 1 to 3 or 4 that may come. So most of it would be moms or grandparents, and then a few childminders. That would make up the bulk of it. There in the United Kingdom, moms that have a baby will get 6 months maternity leave, which can be extended up to 9 months. An employer has to hold the job or that role for them for at least 6 months. And so for 6 months, many times that mom is off, which opens the door for them to come out, and they need that extra socializing during that time. And so they've really come and enjoyed that. And so for the most part, it is moms, grandmas, or childminders, but we do get those about 1 to 3 men who may come, which I'm normally in the first session. We have 2 sessions. I'm normally in the first one with Amara, but I don't often make it to the second one. So great question. Yes?
What would it take for your church, for you to be able to move to plant another church?
Great question. I think one of the biggest things is discipling. As I mentioned about basically everybody under the age of 60 are new believers, new converts, and so it's discipling them. Another thing when it comes to that, kind of one of the things I'll be discussing more probably in the new year, is just giving. And basically those that are 60 and over many times are retired, and so they are tithing, they are giving, but their income is not as high. And then those that are new believers, they haven't been taught yet or learned to give, and so the church would not be able to financially support an individual. And so those are things that we are kind of working through and trying to disciple. So that would be kind of where we're at right now. So great question. Yes?
When it happens, where would you like to go?
Those are great questions. And it's, yes. Well, these are things that I've often wondered, what would be best for us to train somebody to go out and we stay there, or whether we go out and I don't know. I just turned 40 last year, and I have thought, do I have energy to go out and restart another church? And I know I'm quite young still in many people's eyes, but I'm starting to feel that age as well. And so whether it is just because we have a teenager in the home and a toddler in the home, which does take up some of that energy. And so these are all things that it's more in the time, what does God have for us? Is it to train people up to go out? We've had, last year there was another church that was planted in the next town over, and there was probably about a good 25 of our people that went out of our church over there. And so in one sense, there have been church plants. It would also, in that, how far or what areas need churches. So those are all things that we've been praying about, looking at. So yes, great question. Any others? Yes.
I believe your kids go to the public school there, is that right?
So up until COVID, they went to the state school. And then through COVID, when everything was locked down and for several months, school was all online, we switched over and we did Abeka, finished up that year with the videos, and then did another full year doing the Abeka online. And then after that, then they're enrolled in a Christian school, independent Christian school. It's about 45 minutes, depending on the traffic. Sometimes it can take an hour to get there. So that's where they've been over the last, I think, 2.5 years now, is in the school there. It has been nice. There's a teacher that lives over by us that works there 3 days a week. And so normally we're only making about 3 round trips a week, just because on 2 days that she doesn't work, one of the days I normally stay there in town at a coffee shop, and that's my office day. Another day, Anna makes the round trip, stays at a coffee shop up there, and so we try to utilize the time. So even with the distance between the lifts, the extra rides that they get with the teacher, and then for us, when we do go, we try to stay and use the time that way. So that's where they've been the last 2.5 years. So, great question. Yes?
Those houses all connected, just like they did in Pennsylvania, the coal miners.
Yes.
But I also seen a big green field. Where in the world is that at?
So that is Porthcary Park, which is on the edge of town. In the midst of all of the congestion, they do try to make an emphasis on parks. So we actually have a park just, 50 yards away from our house that does have a large open green space, has 2 tennis courts, has a outdoor basketball area, an exercise area, a playground. And so they do have several parks scattered amongst all of the congestion. So yes. Yes?
How many people you got helping disciple besides you and Anna? I mean, do you have any help?
We do have some. We have a man in our church who has grown up in a Christian home. Actually, his dad was a pastor. He's now, I believe, in his 60s, late 60s. He's retired. But on Wednesday evenings, he's been teaching a systematic theology. And so we've done 4 weeks. We've had a space over the Christmas where he's off. Then we'll do another few weeks, kind of doing it more blocks at a time. And so that has been good. There's been several who are new to church who've been going through that. We've been recording that as well so that those that can't make it can still listen into it. And so he's trying to do it in a way that those that have never or don't have much knowledge about the Bible can grasp, but those that have been in church all of their life can still learn as well. So he's trying to do a very well-balanced. So that's been a great help in that area. For the ladies, and he's done some Christianity Explored as well. So we don't have a massive amount for discipleship, and so it is a lot of more work on us. And this past, like the children's nativity, there's some things that we've just had to tell the church, you know what, if you want it to happen, somebody's going to have to volunteer and step up to do it. And so for the children's nativity, the 2 ladies that headed that up. Both of them began going to the church from an unchurched background in 2023, were baptized, and so they are new believers, and so they took on that responsibility, planned it all. I think they did see there is much more involved on the leadership side than what most people see, but they did a fabulous job, and so it is great. It's not just discipleship of that teaching, but trying to get them to take that step and getting more involved and take on that leadership role. When you see Jesus with his disciples, you often see Jesus teaching them, and then Jesus letting them watch him, and then Jesus watches them as they begin serving. Then Jesus sent them out and brought them back and had another discussion. And then we see Jesus crucified, risen again. He ascended up into heaven, and then they were ready to be launched out with the power of the Spirit. And so that is kind of what we desire is you watch us, we'll watch you, we'll let you launch out, but then come back, we'll discuss what did you think went well, and kind of going with that approach. And it has been going well with that. So, great question. Well, yes?
A couple of things about the country of Wales. Is it obviously very heavily populated there in the city? The whole country, is it pretty sparsely populated out about and mostly concentrated in cities like yours, or?
Yeah. So there is a lot of countryside, and I would say most people live in cities. Even to a farmer who may own hundreds of acres cannot just section off a piece of land and build another house. They have, I believe, what they call green space and brown space. Brown space you can build on, green space you can't build on. So most new houses, if you will, in the countryside, they're actually barn conversions. So farmers who no longer are farming or they're not using the buildings as they once did, those barns are then converted to housing and either sold or rented out. So most new in the countryside, that's actually how they are new. But cities are growing and expanding, and even the newest development in our town was, I think, wasteland. What was, I think they call locomotive graveyard. So once they cleared out all of the locomotives, then they began building down by the docks. I think in the excavating and all of that, they had dug up, I think, 3 bombs that were dropped in World War I or World War II. And so they've had to do a lot of cleaning out, but then it became building area. And so they try to find whatever area they can to build on, but they try to keep the green fields as green fields. So.
Does most everybody speak English there?
Yes.
Is your ministry all in English?
In our area, South Wales, it is predominantly English. I think the last I had looked a few years ago, I believe it was 4% where Welsh is the first language. Now you go West Wales, Pembroke area, or to the North Wales, where like the Roberts are at, then it changes to where it would be more predominantly Welsh. But in the south part of Wales, in the coal industry, all of that, the English came over for the jobs, and then English was pushed to where if you wanted a good job, you learned English. And so English became the predominant language. Now there is trying a resurgent of the Welsh language with a lot of Welsh schools or teaching Welsh in the English schools, because in their minds, what is a Welsh person that doesn't know Welsh? Well, they almost become English, and they don't want that. So to keep that culture, they're trying to keep that language. So great question. But yes, for us, everything is in English, just because it is predominantly English. So great question. Well, it's yes.
Your church, do you have government controls such as taxes or permits? They let you operate pretty much independently?
Yes. So we've never had an issue with government and with government control. During COVID, there was the lockdowns where we were not allowed to gather together. But on the other hand, I did not feel that was a government restriction that restricted religion, if you will, because if they were closing down pubs and bars before they closed down the church, well, it's not necessarily a religious persecution, if you will. And when the pubs in Wales or the pubs in Scotland or Northern Ireland or England are all shut down, you know there's something that they're taking serious. But we were allowed to open up far before they were allowed to open up. So that would be the only, what you might say, the government with that restriction. But otherwise, I mean, we've been able to function just as you would here. And in the United Kingdom, there is not the argument of separation of church and state, just because the king is the head of the Church of England. And so that kind of blurs the lines between government and the religion, if you will. And so here, there is a fight to keep religion out of government or government out of religion. There's not that fight, but there's also not that controlling of what we do. So, great question. Yes?
You guys mentioned like how you've already struggled this past year. What do you find are your biggest barriers to ministry now?
I was asked this past summer a question, what are your greatest blessings and what are your greatest challenges? And my answer was one word: people. And people are the greatest blessings, but also people can become the greatest challenges. But you see that in Jesus' time. You see that anytime. And so when it comes to challenges, in one sense, time and energy for us would probably be the other challenges, is just having enough time. But in one sense, that can also become the blessing. Because if we don't have the time and energy, then that means somebody else, if you want it to happen, you're going to have to step up and do it. So just as I mentioned about the Christmas nativity, that became the same thing when it came to our Christmas dinner. It was asked in our members meeting, are we going to have a Christmas dinner this year? And I mentioned, we don't have the capacity to plan it or put it on, but if people would like it and would like to step up and organize everything, then that would be great. And so that person who had asked, she organized it, and it got many different people within the church involved in providing the meals. And so it was good in a sense because of the struggle that we don't have the energy or the time. It has allowed other people to step up. And so I think what can be our greatest blessings can also be our greatest curse. And it can happen the other way around as well. And so it's trying to find the positives in all of that. So, great question. Yes?
Have a group of men that are like elders or deacons or something that support you?
Yes.
What you do, spiritually.
Yes. We have we have one other man who is an elder. He's 82 years old, so he's struggling with his health more. We had two individuals that were nominated, but neither one of them felt to take on that responsibility. Now, one of them is a deacon and does a massive amount with the building and maintenance and the fire and safety on that role. Both of these men have, well, and then the other one, even though not wanting to become an elder, he's the one that is teaching the systematic theology. So both of them although they've not stepped up in that role, are still helping more in the deacon role. And so they are a massive help. I think I was talking to my brother-in-law, and there is a sense that there is an emotional and spiritual burden that I carry, in a sense, that I'm not able to share with them because they're not in that capacity. So we do have some support, but it would be nice to have a bit more support as well. So, great question, though.
It's nice to have that.
Yes.
Support group and somebody behind you.
Yes. And in one sense, I would say we haven't felt that very much. To the point where I think it's well known, British don't like conflict. They don't like to be confrontational. They just want to make peace at all costs. And with that, many people would say, well, I don't want to take sides. But then they would just move because they didn't want to take sides, they didn't want to be in the confrontation, and then they would just leave the church and go somewhere else. And it's like, well, sometimes you have to stand up for what is right. And many years ago, I think it's an Irish poet or a politician who is accredited, but I think the saying goes back further. All that needs to take place for evil to triumph is for good men to do nothing. And so sometimes there does need to be that stepping up, but many times people don't want to step up because they don't want to be involved in any type of tension, or so then they sit back. And so, yes, it has been much more burden on us in a sense of bearing that alone. So, good question. Yes?
Do you have many teenagers in the church?
We don't. We have a lot of children. And I think with the Totally Tots ministry being our main outreach ministry, we've seen a lot of children growing up in the church. So we have quite a few 10 and under, but Noah would be basically our only teenager. He's 13 now. And so up until COVID, we had our youth ministry, and that was closed down just when everything took place with COVID. And after COVID, it was trying to, what is the biggest priority? The biggest priority was our Sunday morning service. Our next priority was the Totally Tots ministry. Then it was more the discipleship, our Christianity Explored. And then as things continued to grow, I didn't have that capacity to lead the youth ministry. And I've mentioned to the church, I mean, there was a day that I could spend one full day on the maintenance of the church. I could visit every single person that attended on Sunday. I could I could head and lead and organize youth ministry. But as the church has grown, I don't have that capacity anymore. And so unless there are people in the church that are able to step up. So since about September, we've started one Sunday evening a month where we'll have a youth event. And so Lord willing, we're praying that that'll grow into more of a regular youth club once again. But as of right now, we don't have many teenagers in the church. So I'm not sure, what time do you normally finish Sunday school? 10:45? Okay. Yes. So we've got 5 minutes then? Okay. So we've got 5 minutes. Yes, these are all excellent questions. Who else? Yes.
A lot of cultural struggles going on because of so much illegal immigration and so forth. And I know in Europe they've got infiltrated a lot by Middle Easterners and so forth. Is that happening in Wales also, or not?
In one sense, I think that was kind of one of the biggest talks about Brexit back, was that I think 2016, when they voted to come out of the European Union. And I believe a lot of the reasoning behind it was based on immigration. And I believe Turkey was talking about joining the European Union. And so then it would have opened up the door. And basically, in the European Union, people can move from country to country almost as easy it is to move from state to state here. And so I think that's what Brexit kind of brought that. Now, there is still people that try to cross over into the UK. There is a natural barrier, if you will, because of the channel. I don't follow it that much. I don't watch the news a whole lot, so I don't hear all of that, what's going on. We don't see it massively in our town. But on the other hand, when we did have youth club a few years back, we had a couple of the kids were Syrian refugees. And so we did have some of that. But I don't think it's as high as it is here. But some of that is because they've come out of the European Union for some of that. They also have that natural barrier surrounded by water. So it's crossing a larger body of water to get over. So, good question. Any others? Maybe one or two? Yes.
So what is your biggest prayer request for us to pray for you guys?
I think the biggest prayer request would be just wisdom for us in that discipleship and having the right people in that right role, not being desperate because there is a need to be filled, but waiting. I mean, right now, we need a treasurer. And over the last 6 months, I've been doing like I'm the one that's paying bills and doing all of that kind of stuff. And so we've had somebody who's kind of an acting treasurer, who's been kind of keeping track of the accounts, but because the bank has been very slow in the process of getting people added on, they don't have access to the accounts, but that has been more of a temporary till the end of the year. And so, but yet on the other hand, it's not something that anybody could just jump in and be the treasurer, and they need to be spiritual enough to fill that role. I believe they ought to be somebody who is giving, because I don't think it's right for somebody to be a treasurer who's not financial contributing to the church. And so, but yet in one sense, it could be, well, we need it, so let's just put anybody in. Well, I don't want to be in that position because it hurts later on. So using that wisdom, that patience, discernment, encouraging people to take steps, but yet using wisdom of how much, at what level, and all of that, and then just that discipleship, and for people to grow in their walk with Christ. So that would be some of the biggest prayer requests that I would ask. Yes?
Who's preaching for you while you're here?
So we have the South Wales director. I would have had a couple men in the church preach while we were away, but one was traveling, one was uncertain because his daughter was expecting their first baby just a couple days ago, and so wasn't sure what was going to happen there. And then the other one, he does all of our music, so I didn't want him to have to do the music and preach. So we have this. We're part of FIEC, which is Fellowship of Independent Evangelical Churches. And so the South Wales director is preaching. He preached this morning for us. And then next week, we have a missionary who does a lot of missions work in Asia. And he just got back for 3 months traveling. And he does a lot of training of pastors and ministry leaders. He's back in Wales for 1 month, and then he'll be heading back out. So while he's back, he's preaching for us next week. So yes. So I believe that may be all of the time this morning. But it has been great to be here, and excellent questions. Please let me know if you have any other questions, and I'll try to do the best to answer those questions. But we'll go ahead and close, I believe, in a word of prayer, and then we'll see you in the next hour. Our Heavenly Father, we do thank you just for this time that we've been able to gather together and just coming before you and reflecting about the ministry of your work around the world. I pray that you would work in our hearts. Give us wisdom as we pray for one another and also as we pray for the ministry, whether it's here in Charlotte or there in Wales. But most of all, we thank you for who you are, your love for us, and your desire to use us. We ask these things in Jesus' name. Amen.